and then they can make a determination.
Sure,
So.
that sounds good.
Thank you, Alderman Straight. My only concern with that is getting into negotiation, into the actual negotiating process and looking at what the HUD rules are. I suppose if they were stayed, and they would have to stay as those guidelines are very clear. My only concern is getting into the weeds a little bit. I just want to remind that we do have a drop dead date of September 30th of 2022 on this. We are going to have to make a decision if something doesn't happen here soon. But as City Manager Barry said, and I agree, decision doesn't have to be made tonight. Perhaps as liaison, Alderman Straight, you can reach out to Mr. Zaki and Mr. Barry, see if that there is something or a place as the liaison. But I would be remiss to have the entire council get engaged into that process.
No, sir. I was just meaning myself.
Thank you. Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor, Madam Mayor. Tom, once the sites are, obviously, I was happy to hear that all these offers are contingent on one another. Once the whole site has an accepted offer, when can work start? When can funds be, or is it hit the ground running next day kind of thing?
So there are some activities that have to occur, like the environmental review or the assessment and some of those activities.
Timeline on some of that stuff, some before kind of the groundwork really starts happening as far as environmental impact studies and stuff like that?
There are timeframes to get those activities done, and of course those activities have to be linear. One has to follow the other, has to follow the other. Those are the rules by which HUD describes that we can't move the project forward. So if you wanted to start designing the gathering space now, we could certainly do that, but we'd have to use city funds to do that. Of course, that doesn't make sense to design it when we don't have the property. So each of these things, one has to occur after the other. So. As soon as we get the properties, and we start moving on the environmental. As soon as we get that cleared, we can start doing other things, purchase the properties, and start spending money on doing design and other sorts of things as well.
Further questions? Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor, Madam Mayor. I think it would be a wise decision of this council to think about that, possibly putting a drop dead date on this particular site. Maybe not tonight, obviously not tonight, but I think it's something because if we get too far behind the 8 ball, we lose a construction season, we lose some time frame the longer we wait. So I would be willing to hear a staff recommendation, maybe in the month of June, to move this process forward.
Madam Mayor, Mr. Mayor, and council members, I would suggest that we reconvene the Gatherings Place Steering Committee and have Alderman Straight do that, and staff will work up backwards based upon some time frames, what seems to be a reasonable drop dead deadline, or deadline rather, and we can propose maybe one or several to you, depending upon what moves forward. Because if it doesn't work in this particular site, we're going to need time to try to make it work in another site. And if that doesn't work, we may need time to make it work in a third site. So those things all have to be considered, and those are going to mark our schedule. We have 3 construction seasons left before that funding essentially goes away. Not including this one.
And Alderman Straight, if you would reconvene that as part of getting in touch with Mr. Zakian and Mr. Barry to reach out to the other individuals, I think that would be an appropriate process.
Sure, sir. I guess I'll take my comments off the record, and we'll try to hash this out behind the scenes. But I guess from my standpoint, from a drop dead date, I've been involved with this project for 3 years. So my term on City Council is up next year, and that's what I'll have to show possibly for it. Is I attended a bunch of meetings for 4 years. I think from our private-public partnership, we should try to do better. I know it's frustrating, but I'm incredibly frustrated. So if you want me to call that committee back together, sir, I will. To your point earlier, I think we have to have some clear goals laid out. So thank you, sir.
Alderman Walski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor. Mr. Barry, I appreciate all the conversation here tonight, but I do want to chime in with the fact that I'm very uncomfortable with the notion of even this conversation of a drop dead date, because I think that just sort of cracks the door open to Plan B. And I think people in the community are excited about this project. They're excited about this location. I know from conversations I've had with a number of the property owners that we are negotiating with, if we're frustrated, I know the feeling is mutual. And so I think it's very important that we get some people together and figure out what's going on, because of the frustration and because of what may be some miscommunication. But and I think it may also be important for us as a council or as a city in some form to potentially develop some contingencies in terms of, can we do this with property A, B, and D, or property B, C, and D? Or so if we hit somewhere, we can still potentially, if we hit a roadblock with one property, we may still be able to find a way forward with some combination of the other properties. Like I said, I'm uncomfortable with the discussion of this drop dead date, just because of the chatter it will inevitably lead to in the community, and the idea that the city has been somehow angling towards that outcome from the beginning. And as this particular project goes along, I have continued to hear that chatter or that murmur in the background that this has always been about trying to move to another location at some point. So I appreciate the indulgence of these comments. I remain very committed to this particular location and want to see this project accomplished there.
Madam Mayor, Mr. Mayor, if I may, Alderman Wolski, with respect, say that is an insult to myself. It should be an insult to the council, and it should be an insult to the staff. There is no one in the city working harder to try to make this project work than the staff. So let me put that to bed. Second of all, we cannot force people to sell their properties. We can't. Now, if the city wants to spend its own funding to purchase those properties, it can do so, and it can pay whatever price it wants to, provided people want to sell, or alternatively, if you want to condemn them, you can do that, but you can't do it with the federal funds. Third, we cannot pay above a certain dollar amount according to the cost-benefit ratios established by HUD. So even if folks want to sell us their properties, they can't sell us their properties at whatever they want in price. We have some big hurdles here, and I want to make very clear, it is not the city staff that is trying to go for another project site. We are working very hard on this project, which, by the way, is the lowest ranked project of all the HUD projects that the city had applied for. So I do get a bit excited about that, because I can tell you we're working very hard on this.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. Mr. Berry, I did not mean to offend, and I do appreciate the passion in your response. I simply want to express that the frustration is out there, the murmurs are out there, and we need to acknowledge that, and we need to be aware of it. And so I don't doubt that everybody is working very diligently on this, but we want to see this one succeed in this location. And so I think it's healthy for us to have these discussions and healthy for us to have these exchanges so people can see this. But this stuff needs to get aired out, and it needs to happen, frankly, in my opinion, in this manner from time to time. So, thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Wolski. And just on the information side of that, again, I think it's okay to say, too, that if it doesn't work, we move the site. Because if we can't buy a couple of those properties, it's game over. That's the reality of this contingent site. We can't mix and match two blocks away locations. That is the reality here. It does have to be within that same given area. I absolutely want to see this site succeed. But I think it's also realistic to say that if it doesn't, we also have to be prepared to move to one of the other contingents. That is the reality. We'll do everything we can to get it done here, but we also have to be prepared if it doesn't. Alderman Pittner, one more discussion
Thank you,
on
Mayor.
this, and
Madam
let's
Mayor.
get moving.
And that's where my comments came in as far as the drop dead date. Possibly, we cannot back ourselves into a
Alderman Pittner,
corner
one more
in this
discussion.
situation, because I work in real estate. We are going to put ourselves in a non-negotiable position, and to Tom's, City Manager Barry's comments, we can't pay an individual a dollar amount just because that's what they want. We have to pay them what it's worth, and that's my motive behind saying that, is I'd hate to see us backed into a corner to where it's too late to see this project through. I would love to see it succeed in this location absolutely. But we have to be realistic, and we have to be diligent with these funds that we do have, and the funds that we were awarded. That's why I make that comment to think that there's frustrations that the city won't pay them funds, that pay them a make me move price, or whatever that might be. If that's some of the comments, or if that's some of the murmurs that you're hearing, so be it. That's fine. But we have to be diligent with these funds. We have to be responsible with them. So that's why I bring it up. That's why I make those comments. Like I say, we have to be responsible with those grant dollars. So, thank you.
Madam Mayor, with your permission, I'll scream through the last slide or two.
Yes, if
since
you
it's
would,
up there.
please, sir.
The Carnegie Building is a very visible building. There's a lot of activity that's been taking place on this. We're excited to have this project nearing an end. This was the $500,000 project to restore the corner of the building that had been separating from the remainder of the building due to foundation problems. So that's proceeding very nicely at this point in time. We already talked about Building Safety Month, so we're going to move on from this. The Public Works Open House we talked about as well. We also talked about the Sister City Summit, and there we go. So that was it. I only missed one slide. How about that? All right. Any other questions for me before we move on?
Alderman Patrugula, I won't make her say that.
Alderman Steve is fine, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to compliment you and Tom for your efforts during the legislative session. Since I first became involved in council 21 years ago, I think this is the most coordinated, best planned, and best executed lobbying plan the city has ever had. You two bore the brunt of it. You spent innumerable hours traveling to Bismarck, lobbying, talking, educating, countering misconceptions and misunderstandings. And although we didn't get everything we wanted, I think we did quite well. And we can't control what the legislature does or doesn't do. But I think unless you've been involved in the lobbying process before, as I have at many levels and for many years, I don't think the average person appreciates how much work it is. And I've been very impressed with the lobbying position papers that have been prepared, the process of getting all of the council members and the community on board in terms of setting direction, giving input, the apparent effectiveness of our work with our lobbyist. This really has been an outstanding effort from my perspective, and I wanted to publicly thank both of you and the other aldermen who participated in this and the other city staff. Many of them were down there also for many days. Wanted to really thank you very sincerely and reinforce your very hard efforts. They really are appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Steve. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Now the city attorney report.
Madam Mayor and Mr. Mayor, I submitted a written report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for city attorney? That takes us to number 8, consider the report of the Planning Commission consent items. This is for everyone that is out in the audience or at home. Planning Commission 8.1 through 8.7. Is there any individual item that needs to be pulled for discussion?
I think we should pull, I think it's 8.6, Mr. Mayor. Is that the synthetic turf discussion?
It is. 8.6 pulled. Any further items on the consent for planning? If not, we would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move motion to approve the remaining items.
Motion by Alderman Pittner, second by Alderman Janser. Any discussion? And again, for the folks at home, this is passing all items under the Planning Commission. 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, 4, 5, and 7. We will discuss 8.6 individually.
Please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Maytan,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion approved.
At points, takes us to 8.6, pass an ordinance to adopt changes to the Minot zoning code ordinance, the C3 downtown signs, as well as the artificial turf.
Mayor, I'd move the item.
Motion to approve by Alderman Wolski.
Second.
Second by Alderman Pittner. Discussion. Alderman Wolski.
Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor, very briefly, the synthetic turf portion of this agenda item got a significant amount of discussion over the past month or so at the Planning and Zoning Steering Committee meetings. Of particular point that the committee was divided on was whether we should allow synthetic turf in residential neighborhoods to be visible from essentially the street in front of the home. Ultimately, the committee chose the path forward, which is the one you have before you here today, which creates some hurdles for synthetic turf, but does ultimately probably take a slightly skewed towards property rights perspective on this particular issue. Just wanted to provide a little bit of an update right there. I greatly appreciate the work of the Planning Commission or the Steering Committee on this, on both of these issues. Just wanted to share those thoughts.
Further discussion? Please call the roll.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Maytan,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight.
Yes.
That takes us to number 9, a public hearing. Pass an ordinance to change the zone from C2 to RM on the Goheen's Edition Lot 6, Block 3, a public hearing to consider the request by Scott and Marcia Julson to change the zone from C2, the General Commercial District, to RM, the Medium Density District, on the Goheen's Edition Lot 6, Block 3. This is, again, a public hearing for anyone that wants to speak on the issue. Any discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion. Alderman Janser.
Mr. Mayor, I move we close the public hearing and approve the item.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Janser, second by Alderman Olson. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Maytan.
Yes. Motion approved.
That takes us to number 10, the public hearing, another public hearing, pass an ordinance to change the zone from R4 to R1S on the Ramsted Heights addition. To consider a request by the Bakken Development Group 1 LLC to change the zoning from R4 Planned Residential District to R1S Single Family Residential District with small lot size flexibility on the Ramsted Heights addition. This property is located at 3213 to 3315 15th Street Northwest. This is, again, a public hearing for anyone to speak on behalf, for or against the proposed change. Last chance. Looking for a motion. Alderman Straight.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move to close the public hearing and approve the item.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Straight, second by Alderman Pittner. Discussion. Discussion.
Please call the roll.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Maytan,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula.
Yes.
Number 11 is another public hearing.
A public hearing to consider the request by the Bakken Development Group 1 LLC to change the zone from R4, the Planned Residential District, to R1S Single Family District with smaller lot size flexibility, again on Ramsted Heights Second Edition. This property is located at 3407 to 3421 on 15th Street Northwest. Again, a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor or opposed to the proposed change? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move we close the public hearing and approve the item.
Motion by Alderman Pittner,
Second.
second by Alderman Olson. Any further discussion on the motion?
Please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Maytan,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Number 12 is a city council consent items.
City Council consent items, that is 12-1 through 12-6. 16. Alderman Janser.
Mr. Mayor, I move the consent items in section 12.
Second.
A motion by Alderman Janser, second by Alderman Olson. For the,
Mr. Mayor?
yes, Alderman Wolski.
I'd request we pull items 1211, 1212, and 1214.
1211, 1212, and 1214. Does anyone in the audience or up at the dais have any other items that they wish pulled out of the consent agenda items? Otherwise, it would be passed to consent by recommendations from staff. We'll discuss 1211, 1212, and 1214 individually. We have a motion and a second.
Please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Maytan.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Number 1211 on a consent item, the Washington Elementary Safe Routes to School Award Bid 4367 is recommended to the City Council award the bid for the Washington Elementary Safe Routes to School project to the low bidder Minot Paving Company Incorporated to the amount of $191,775.90 and to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement upon the concurrence of award from the NDDOT.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderman Olson, second
Second.
by Alderman Janser. Discussion. Alderman Wolski.
Mayor Sitma, Madam Mayor, this item has been in our pipeline for a little while. I've shared some comments regarding the engineering costs on this project in the past. I support safe roads to schools. I support sidewalks, but I simply can't reconcile myself to this particular engineering cost associated with this project. So I'll be voting no tonight.
Further discussion. Please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
No.
Sitma,
Yes.
Maytan,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 12.12 on our consent items is the Washington Elementary Safe Routes to School Award of Construction Engineering Service 4367. Recommended the council select Ackerman Esfold to perform the construction engineering services for the Washington Elementary Safe Routes to School project. It's also recommended the council authorize the mayor to sign the agreement.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderman Olson, second by
Second.
Alderman Janser. Discussion. Please call the roll.
Please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Nope.
Sitma,
Yes.
Maytan,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
The last item on our consent that was pulled, 12.14, the recommended council select Houston Engineering to perform all general engineering and consulting services for the water-related infrastructure projects as needed on basis for the 3-year term for the Master Water Service RFQ. Recommended the council authorize the mayor to sign the Master Task Force Order Agreement for engineering services as projects arise, and recommended the council authorize the mayor to sign the water modeling task order in the amount of $30,000.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderman Olson,
Second.
second by Alderman Janser. Discussion. Alderman Wolski.
Mayor Sitma, Madam Mayor, just a couple brief comments here and some requests for staff that you guys can file away for to bring back at a future meeting. One, these particular types of RFQ awards have raised concern for me in the past in the sense that we have kind of a standing project that we use into the future, in some cases for several years, to award further design projects. As a request in the future, I'd like to see a review of our policy in terms of, is there a particular dollar threshold in which a particular project may come forward to us in which we need to step outside of these particular award models and then maybe evaluate a different procedure if a project reaches a certain threshold. And then also in terms of the aldermen selected for these particular evaluations. Just curious as to how we go about that, and if there's a set policy or procedure or a rotating set in the schedule in terms of who sits in on these RFQ evaluations. So just want to share those concerns and invite them to be shared with us at some point in the future.
Alderman Wolski, thank you. I believe on the aldermen, it is somewhat rotating through the RFQ process. I have sat on a couple of them through my years, but not a significant amount. City Manager Barry, I believe you had some more.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Mr. Mayor. Alderman Wolski, your timing is great. I have some good news for you. We are evaluating the purchasing policy right now, and it will have just what you described in it. We're looking at thresholds, we're looking at process, and that will be brought back to the City Council for you all to review. We do have some restrictions that are required in regard to conformance with state law, so we'll have to preserve those, but there is some flexibility that we can afford you, and we intend to do that here over the next short period.
Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Padragula?
Yes.
Straight?
Yes.
Wolski?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Maytan?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Number 13 is our action items, the community rating system, open space preservation. 13.1 is to authorize the mayor to sign the statement of intent to preserve open spaces and authorize the mayor to sign any required documents for the airport concurrent use agreement, and also approve the attached budget amendment on first reading. Would look for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Janser,
Second.
second by Alderman Olson. Discussion on the community rating system, open space preservation for the community's rating system under FEMA. Alderman Wolski.
Mayor Sitma, Madam Mayor, maybe a question for our floodplain manager. Lance, if you have an answer to this, I'd love to hear it. If you don't, I don't have a problem with that. Would love to hear the update. But obviously, when we aim for going from a 10% reduction to a 15% reduction, that sounds great. It's outstanding work to be even contemplating these types of goals. Do we have a sense of what the community's total aggregate spend is on flood protection? So if Minot's spending $4 million a year on flood protection and we can save another 5% on top of that, what does that mean for the community in terms of this work?
Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor, Alderman Wolski, I don't have that number off the top of my head. I think did you mean to say what the cumulative amount is for flood insurance premiums paid? Right?
That's another way to phrase it, for
Okay,
sure.
yeah, well, I can reach out to some FEMA folks and see if they have that number. They do track number of policies, and we'll see if we can pull that together for you.
Mr. Mayor, I
Please
would
continue.
fully supportive of this tonight. I just kind of want to get a sense of what is it that we Minot are spending on this, and what is the difference that at a 5% discount actually means to this community, because I suspect they're very significant numbers, and I want to be able to share them.
Sure.
Alderman Wolski, I'll just mention briefly at this point, and we still are in the low-risk zone, which is the X, and the top policy premium right now with the fees is about $502 per year. That's the maximum you can buy through the NFIP plan. Again, once we start seeing those increases, that 5% will be more important, as it increases no more than 12% for the first 2 years and no more than 18% for the years following that. However, if it is a secondary dwelling, it will be an automatic 25% per year, and I believe that is the same for commercial.
Correct.
That 5% will become more important down the road. Further discussion?
Please call the roll.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Padragula?
Yes.
Straight?
Yes.
Wolski?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Maytan?
Yes.
Motion approved. Action item 13.2 is no parking along 16th Avenue Southeast near our Redeemers. It is recommended that the council pass an ordinance to add parking restrictions to the following locations: the south side of 16th Avenue Southeast, east 200 feet to 300 feet from the center of 6th Street Southeast intersection.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderman Olson, second by Alderman Pittner. Discussion. Alderman Straight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Mayor, is it our understanding that this problem probably exists because of the result of the people at our Redeemers parking in this area? Do we have any idea of that? I guess from my standpoint, sir, I guess.
I would look to our traffic engineer to maybe talk a little more about that. I do understand that during the summer, there's some issue there, but that's also when they're not in school. If you could, sir.
It's a combination. So with the our Redeemers parking lot, it's kind of below the surface of 16th a little bit. So you combine that with people parking on 16th Avenue for softball games or other sporting events, overflow. Leaving there is kind of difficult. So what it ends up happening is, excuse me, when people park close to that exit, cars leaving in order to see past them have to go into the road a little bit. This will give them that little extra kind of window, so to speak, of getting out there and being able to see.
Thanks, Stefan.
Yep. Any further discussion? Alderman Wolski.
Mayor Sitma, Madam Mayor, do we have a sense of, during the softball in the summer, do we have overflow parking out onto the street? Is there an impact in that particular circumstance in this area? Anybody have a sense? Mayor, I know you've played a fair amount of softball out there.
It's the only time I've actually seen people park out there is during a couple of events, but I see them actually going into the parking lot of our Redeemers rather than using the street because of the traffic. So I personally have not seen much of an impact there. Further discussion?
Call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padrigula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Maytan,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion approved. 13.3 on our actionable items is the public administration software maintenance. Recommended approving the amendment to the Superion ASP order and software license and service agreement and authorize the mayor to sign on behalf of the city.
So moved.
Moved by Alderman Janser, second by Alderman Wolski. Discussion.
Brief
Alderman
question.
Wolski, yes.
Mr. Lakefield, just to sort of clarify, this would be a result of our new investment in the larger enterprise software, basically kind of indicating that the move to the cloud unnecessary in our old system?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, yes and no. We anticipate with the new system coming up and decreasing our reliance or dependence on the existing system. And what we're concerned about is how much data we are going to be able to transfer to the new system, which is a little bit of an unknown at this point. We don't know how long of a time span we'll have to rely on historical data on the old system. So it just makes a lot more sense to have that hardware in place here on premise so that we don't have to continue to pay those ongoing software agreement fees in the future for them to be hosting the data. Now, we've had some difficulty getting an updated agreement from Superion, and initially we had anticipated pulling this item from the agenda tonight because we've had some dialogue back and forth with the company and haven't been able to resolve the language in the agreement. So right now, I don't have an agreement with the appropriate language in it for you to approve tonight. So we can either take the action and allow the approval for the agreement when it passes muster with our city attorney, or we can bring this back to you in a future meeting.
I would be looking to our motion maker on whether to amend or maintain. Or not amend, but change the motion.
I guess if we want to, I would clarify when the finance director and city attorney are comfortable with the contract language.
Does the second agree?
I would agree.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padrigula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Maytan.
Yes. Motion approved.
Thank you. That takes us to 13.4. This is the amend contract for the transfer of municipal court cases to district court. It is recommended the city council move to approve the amended contract for the transfer of the municipal court cases to district court and authorize the mayor to sign the contract on behalf of the city.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderman Olson.
Second.
Second by Alderman Straight. Discussion? Any discussion?
Please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padrigula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Maytan,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion approved.
That takes us to 13.5. This is the 3rd Street Southeastern Burdick Expressway HSIP, the CPM agreement. Recommended the City Council approve the cost participation and maintenance agreement, the CPM, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement. Authorize the mayor to also sign the budget amendment for the project.
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Straight to approve.
Second.
Second by Alderman Wolski. Any discussion? Any discussion?
Please call the roll.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Maytan,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padrigula.
Yes.
Motion approved.
That takes us to 13.6, the approve eminent domain resolution, the CDBG NDR acquisition. It is recommended the City Council approve a resolution authorizing commitments of eminent domain proceedings for 613 2nd Avenue Northeast, Minot, North Dakota 58703.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Olson, second by Alderman Pittner. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion?
Please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padrigula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Maytan,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. 13.7 is authorization of 14 completed blocks removal in the Renaissance Zone. It is recommended the City Council approve the recommendations of the Renaissance Zone Board for the removal of 14 blocks determined to be completed.
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Janser to approve,
Second.
second by Alderman Olson. Discussion. Alderman Wolski.
Mayor Sitma, Madam Mayor, this is been an ongoing issue that the Renaissance Zone has been contemplating for quite a while now. So good to see this in front of us for a formal recommendation. I'm going to call attention to one particular block. It's Block 18. This would be on Central Avenue, probably on the north side and the eastmost stretch, so the last little section of land before the street kind of merges with city land and Riverbank. Did have a conversation with a property owner there who I think is going to be interested in a project in the future. But at this point, we have an entire block designated for what is mostly a city-owned plat or group of plats. There are just a couple lots left in that particular block due to flood acquisitions or flood protection acquisitions. So I think it's very likely in the future we'll have maybe a half of a block back in front of us to be added back into the program at some point. So I just wanted to call attention to that tonight because there is, I think, an opportunity to improve the streetscape. We do have a historic building on that particular block that is a good candidate for the program. So I just wanted to share that thought.
Thank you, Alderman Wolski. Further discussion.
Please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padrigula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Maytan.
Yes. Motion approved.
13.8, City Council Policy Direction for the Opportunity Zone Strategy. It's recommended the City Council provide policy direction to promote the investment in the Opportunity Zone. The details and attachments were before us. I would look for a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion by Alderman Straight,
Second.
second by Alderman Pittner. Mr. Zakian, welcome to the podium.
It's rare that, Madam Mayor, Mr. Mayor, it's rare that I'm this late into the process. I don't want you to get fooled that I'm not going to say anything. But I promise I'll try to be short. In simple terms, as outlined in the memo before you, the Opportunity Zone has taken on a life of its own through the private sector. This was part of last year's Tax Reform Act. Minot is one of the fortunate communities that has its entire downtown area plus an area outside of it known as Census Tract 101, which has been designated as an Opportunity Zone. It's a new effort on the part of the federal government to jumpstart investment in areas that clearly need investment. Now, what has taken place is the rules, it's federal government, the rules have still not been promulgated to govern the overall use of these zones. Last week, the second part of two-part of the draft rules were finally released by the Internal Revenue Service, which is a designated entity to enforce this program. In essence, those rules, still in draft stage, so we still don't have any final rules, basically turned it back to the private sector and basically said this is going to be a self-certified tax break program. So what has already begun to take place, not in North Dakota and not in many states, but more on the East Coast and the West Coast, where all the financial companies are, they've begun to create funds known as qualified opportunity funds. Those funds will become the source of investments in opportunity zones. Now, as of I speak now, we're only aware of two very minor actual investments in opportunity zones, both in Colorado, both related to a corporate park actually being managed by a university. The sense is that these qualified opportunity funds, probably in the next 4 or 5 months, will really begin to invest in opportunity zones. And what is being recommended to cities throughout the nation, which is why I felt it was time to bring it to you, is that cities become proactive to the greatest extent they can by trying to put together a cohesive message in showing what type of investments the city wants to welcome, the additional incentives that the city can offer, such as the Renaissance Zone, perhaps TIFs, and also take into account all the various activities that the city manager alluded to in his report that are going on as a result of the IEDC report and all the different task forces. I have spoken with our new community development director about becoming involved in this. Basically, what I want to recommend to you, and I hope you will respectfully agree, is to authorize the city government to begin the process, in effect, to put together a portfolio of what can be offered and what types of investments we would like to see in our opportunity zone, and to also further engage all the different groups, the stakeholders, and all the different IEDC white paper task forces that are still moving forward, to talk about where they are and see how we can dovetail that in. The plan would be that I would begin the process. I have actually, since I have brought us here to this point, I don't want to fall down on the job, but with the goal, hopefully, in the not too distant future, of having the economic development position, specialist position in the community development department filled, that once that position is filled and he or she is in that position, I would then work with Brian, community development director, and transition this focus and activity to the community development department, continuing to still provide support and assistance. I honestly believe that if we wait until that happens, which could be a month, it could be 2 months, I'll defer to the city manager and the community development director. It may be too late to start the process. For what I understand, a number of these funds have already been created, both on the East Coast and West Coast. I'm not aware of any that are being created yet in North Dakota, but that's not to say a month from now they won't be. The one thing to keep in mind, and I did point out this out in the memo, in order to get the full benefit of the capital tax, of the capital investment tax break that the federal government is willing to offer, investments need to be made before the end of this year, of 2019. So that means that sooner rather than later, activity will begin to take place throughout the United States. The other thing to keep in mind is that while we're certainly proud and excited to be an opportunity zone, we're one of about 1,500 opportunity zones in the United States and all the various territories, Puerto Rico, Guam, Virgin Islands. And therefore, we're going to be kind of an intense competition. And it'll be important for us to be as advanced as we can. So that's why I thought it was timely and appropriate to bring it forward now.
Thank you, Mr. Zakian, and specifically to this December of 2019, to have that investment in there. It definitely talks about the timeliness of having the portfolio. Any further questions for Mr. Zakian? Mr. Wolski.
Not so much question, maybe a couple of comments, and I think it's important just to highlight some elements of this. But the 2019 calendar year is the deadline for realizing the maximum available amount of benefits. If a project matures at some point after that, there are still benefits available, just not to the same degree that is if they're filed in this calendar year. And obviously, with 1,500 opportunity zones across the country, you know, that's a big pool to play in. And so I think, you know, hopefully folks locally are hearing this conversation. My urge would be that they reach out to their accountants and their financial advisors and explore this particular program, because we have a real opportunity here to make dollars count a little more than they usually do and make projects a little more viable than they usually are. And it's my hope would be that we have lots of Minot investors making investments in their own town.
Further questions or discussion? Alderman Straight.
Mr. Mayor, I guess just to follow up on Alderman Wolski's point, you, city manager, many of us attended the governor's Main Street Initiative conference maybe last year. It's not the thriving downtowns that just succeed because they're downtown. It's the neighborhoods near them that can feed our downtown and make it successful. And if there would be a way to capture our probably 5 residential neighborhoods that feed our downtown that could, I think 3 or 4 of them were flooded. If there's a way to incentivize a program like this and include that in some capacity, I think that's a worthy endeavor if we could figure out a way to move in that direction. So for what it's worth, sir.
Further discussion?
Please call the roll.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Zitma,
Yes.
Maytan,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula.
Yes.
Motion approved.
13.9 is the City Council authorize the submission of the Opportunity Zone streamlining ideas to HUD. To authorize the submission to HUD comments proposing measures to be implemented by HUD to expedite and support the use of the CDBG NDR funds in the Opportunity Zone. Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Wolski.
Second.
Second by Alderman Pittner. Discussion on the items. I would just myself say, Mr. Zakian, I was really happy to see some of the suggestions that were outlined within the packet, talking about the suggestions to HUD to, I think, hopefully capitalize and maybe push them in the right direction with some out-of-the-box thinking. I would be very curious to see what they have to say about it. Any further discussion?
Excuse me, sir.
Is this relating specific to this item? Is this, no, to this item on the Opportunity Zone
Yes.
streamlining ideas?
Opportunity Zone about talking what we should do to that area? Or are we talking also with the board, so disadvantaged citizens don't have a place to stay? Maybe we can get HUD, go under like the tribal reservations?
This has to deal specifically with this action item only.
I have a roof over their head. Is that what you're talking about?
This is entirely different from that, sir.
Okay.
So we're discussing this action item.
All right. Excuse me for interrupting, sir.
Further discussion?
Please call the roll.
Wolski,
Yes.
Zitma,
Yes.
Maytan,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That takes us to number 14, the standard specifications and details for construction, the draft revision. This is currently an informational item, and City Engineer Lance Meyer is here with a brief overview of those draft revisions that were also part of the handout or to the attachment on the city website. Good evening again, Mr. Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Madam Mayor, members of council. Very briefly, we have a standard specifications and details that governs all construction within our right-of-way. Because of workload and other factors, we haven't had the opportunity to update that as frequently as we wanted to. So we've taken the opportunity now to do that. We've had a lot of changes. The DOT put out a new spec that we have to reference just things that we've learned in the last several years with all the major construction, what works well and doesn't work well as far as products. And so it's very technical in nature. We put that out there for all the developers and the engineers to comment. We've had several comments from some of our local engineers as to things that they suggest we change or add or delete. So we're evaluating all that. After the comment period is closed, we'll evaluate all those comments and make adjustments if we have to, and then we bring that document back to you for approval. We used to do this yearly, so most of you probably haven't been a part of that process in a while. But then after that, going forward, we'll get back on our every year update again, where we'll just make minor revisions to certain spec sections. So just getting that out there is another public touch point, and if they have comments, they can email us at engineers@minotnd.org or give us a call. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Meyer. It's been a long night,
All
right? Any questions for Mr. Meyer?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Brief comment attached to this. Lance, greatly appreciate seeing this stuff. As I look over these things, one of the items I pulled up was the draft of the residential street cross-section. And as I look at these specifications, I can't help but thinking that there are a lot of circumstances in which these are really significant hidden cost drivers. As I look at something like the width of a street, which right now our spec calls at 37 feet, if we're to reduce that down to 33 feet, we're roughly a 10% savings in pavement. We're roughly a 10% savings in the cost of pavement the next time. We've got 10% less street to sweep. We've got 10% less snow to push off. We've got also the advantage of being able to put that property, that 10%, back into productivity on the edges of the streets, essentially private property that becomes developable. So we get revenue in back from this. So I encourage you guys, as you're going through these specs, to really look for those areas where these specifications may be driving costs that, frankly, we can't afford, because I think we've all been through some budgets. We're starting to acknowledge that this system we've created for ourselves, we don't necessarily love paying for the management and the maintenance of it. And I'm hopeful that maybe we can look at some of this stuff from that perspective as well. I don't anticipate any of these things are going to make any difference. If we did make changes to them, I mean, this is a decades-long cycle in terms of realizing some of these savings, but I think we should be thinking about it. We need to be looking at these drivers that push our costs up when sometimes we don't even acknowledge or understand how.
Mr. Mayor and Madam Mayor, Alderman Wolski, you bring up a good point. With regard to what we have here, this is the technical specifications as to how to build it, right? But if we get into a discussion of how large we should build it, what our policy should be on right-of-way widths or pavement sections, that kind of thing, that would get into, I think, a different discussion on more of a maybe a council study or a policy for that matter on just what you want to see with your infrastructure. But this document's going to tell you how thick, how wide, that kind of thing. But what drives that is the policy behind where council wants to go with that. So if that's a direction council does want to go down, we can talk about that and come up with something.
Any further questions for Mr. Meyer? Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome.
With number 14 out of the way, we have one last item before we get to our adjournment. I do want to absolutely recognize our 2019 Mayor's Writing Challenge winner, which is the mayor for a day, Caroline Mayton. Her official term, May 6, 2019, from 2:30 in the afternoon until 9 o'clock this evening. Sorry, we're not going to have any official business after we adjourn, although I did catch you yawning, so it does tell me maybe you're heading for homework in bed. So I want to once again congratulate Madam Mayton, Mayor of Minot, for today and with this certificate. And although I know there were a few folks from some of the different departments that were handing out a water bottle and some other things, all I have is the official mayor's coin that has the city of Minot, North Dakota, as well as the office of the mayor, for spending the day with me and learning a little more about the city of Minot, the council, and being engaged as a citizen. So I'd like to offer my congratulations. Thank you. The last act for today is to call for
Adjourn.
adjournment. So we're looking for a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion by Alderman Pittner,
Second.
a second by Alderman Wolski.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Wait, what?
All opposed, same sign.
All opposed, same sign.
We're adjourned.
We're adjourned.